So, what if the most profound acts of faith, the ones that truly define belief, are the very ones that can never ever be explained? Today, we're going to jump into the mind of philosopher Soren Kierkegaard and take a fresh look at one of history's most troubling stories. And in doing so, we might just uncover a powerful truth about the limits of our own words. Okay, let's just get right to the heart of it, the question that kicks this whole thing off. So you've got the story of Abraham, commanded by God to sacrifice his son, Isaac. And on that long 3-day journey to the mountain, he says nothing, not a word to his wife, not a word to his son walking right beside him. I mean, why? That's silence. That's the real puzzle here. For ages, right, the debate among scholars has always been about what Abraham must have been thinking. The general idea was that the real problem, the big paradox of faith, had to be some kind of massive contradiction happening inside his head. Yeah, the traditional view is that this is a paradox of knowledge, of belief. I mean, think about it. How could Abraham possibly believe two completely opposite things at the exact same time? Number one, God told me to kill my son. And number two, God promised that this same son would make me the father of nations. It just doesn't compute, right? It feels like a logical impossibility. But what if that whole debate is just a distraction? What if we've been focusing on the wrong thing this entire time? Well, a really fascinating new analysis by philosopher Alexei Procyshyn suggests that's exactly what's been happening. And here's the big shift. The real defining feature of Abraham's faith isn't what he believes. It's what he can't communicate. The paradox isn't happening in his mind, it's happening in his silence. And this is the crucial part. He doesn't just choose to be quiet. He fundamentally, literally cannot explain himself. To really get our heads around this, we need to look at Kierkegaard's big idea about human experience. He called them the 3 spheres of existence. And as it turns out, each sphere has its own unique kind of silence. So you can see here how it all breaks down. We've got the aesthetic, the ethical, and the religious spheres. And just look at how silence evolves. In the aesthetic sphere, silence is a choice. It's a secret you could tell if you wanted to. Move up to the ethical, and silence is a temporary problem that you must eventually explain. But when you hit the religious sphere, the silence becomes absolute. It's something that is fundamentally incommunicable. Let's start with aesthetic silence. The best way to think about this is like holding a winning hand in poker. You're keeping it a secret to create mystery, maybe a little intrigue. You could show your cards at any moment. The power is in the choice to stay silent. Now, when we get to the ethical sphere, the rules totally change. Silence here isn't a strategy. It's more like being a witness on the stand. It's a temporary state, because eventually you are required to speak up and justify yourself. Think of a tragic hero like Agamemnon who sacrifices his daughter. It's a horrible choice, but he can and he must explain his reasoning to the community using shared ethical principles. But for Abraham, who Kierkegaard calls the knight of faith, the silence is something else entirely. It's not a choice, and it's not temporary. It's more like a radio that's definitely picking up a signal from a faraway station, but all we can hear on our end is static. The message is real for him, but for the rest of us, it's completely untranslatable. This whole idea of an experience that just can't be translated, well, it has some massive consequences for how we understand what faith even is. I mean, Kierkegaard really drives this home. He says that even if Abraham knew every single language in the world, he still couldn't talk about this. It's not about not having the right words. He's operating in a totally different communicative reality. He's speaking, as Kierkegaard says, in tongues. And here's where that contrast just becomes crystal clear. The tragic hero, Agamemnon, is great because we can understand him. We can debate his choice, sympathize with his dilemma. But the knight of faith, Abraham, he is great for the exact opposite reason. He is great because he is beyond our ethical system. His greatness is found in that singular, private, and totally silent relationship with the divine. So let's be really clear. This inability to communicate isn't a bug, it's a feature. The fact that Abraham's experience can't be put into words is the very sign that it's a genuine, profound religious experience, one that has stepped outside the boundaries of our normal, everyday world. Okay, so this is all some pretty heavy 19th century philosophy, but why does it matter for us today? Well, it might just completely reframe how we think about something as modern as interfaith dialogue. And you know, this isn't just a Kierkegaard thing. You see this idea pop up across so many of the world's religions. In Sufism, you have the concept of fana, the annihilation of the self and God. In Kabbalah, there's devakut, this intense cleaving to the divine. In Christianity, there's a whole tradition of prayer that focuses on what can't be said about God. All of these point to core experiences that people insist are ultimately beyond words. This kind of blows up a key assumption in a lot of interfaith work, doesn't it? The idea that if we just talk enough, if we just find the right words, we can explain everything to each other. But what if the most essential, the most vital parts of a person's faith are precisely the parts that can never be explained in a dialogue? So maybe this points to a new kind of approach, one that starts with humility, just acknowledging that our explanations have real limits, one that values shared contemplative silence instead of always needing to talk, and maybe one that focuses more on action, on witnessing how a faith is lived, not just how it's described. And all of this brings us to one final and pretty provocative distinction that this analysis raises. It's a potential clash between two ideals that we all hold in really high regard. Take a look at this difference between how wisdom and faith get passed on. Wisdom, it's like a craft. Think of the ancient Taoist wheelwright. It's hard to explain in words, but an apprentice can learn by doing, by watching, by feeling it out. It can be taught. But Abraham's faith, there's no apprenticeship program for that. It's a path that can't be taught or followed. It's one you have to walk utterly alone. And if we needed one final clue, Kierkegaard himself published this book under a pseudonym, Johannes di Silencio, which literally means John of Silence. It's almost like he was leaving us a little wink, a hint that the most important lesson in the book is the one that could never be written down. And so this leaves us with a really tough final question to think about. If wisdom is something that can be shared and learned by others, but this kind of faith is absolutely singular and cannot be communicated, do we ultimately have to choose one over the other? This whole analysis is based on a really fantastic article by Alexei Procyshyn in the journal Sophia. If you want to go deeper down this rabbit hole, we absolutely recommend you check it out. Thanks for joining us.